However, this landlord, once this whole debacle regarding the lock was solved, made another mistake. They posted a eviction letter on the door of the property. Hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate as well as Remax Realtron Realty, back with another video. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the top 5 common mistakes that, in my experience, first-time or beginner landlords make in tenancy. Now, something I want to mention is the fact that although these mistakes are more often than not made by beginner or inexperienced landlords, I've worked with many big-time experienced landlords who've worked with tenants for 30 years and have up to 10 rental/investment properties, and I've worked with these individuals as their realtor, and I can tell you that they sometimes make these mistakes as well. Anyways, before we get into the list, please, as always, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Tell me what I can do better. Tell me what I already do well, and my contact info is in the description box. Get in touch with me if you have any inquiries or suggestions, or if you just want to chat about anything. Really, I'm down to talk. Number 5, accepting and actually seeking cash-only arrangement with tenants. Now, why is this a mistake? Let me just clarify one thing. If a tenant or potential tenant offers to pay exclusively cash, or rather you as a landlord seeks that arrangement out, it's a mistake for 2 main reasons. Number 1, you can't record or track or bookkeep any finances between the 2 parties. Meaning, as a tenant, if you pay the rental amount for that month or the upcoming month in cash, and there's some sort of dispute regarding amounts, you don't have that on paper. You don't have that reference point to check and verify all payments. Same as the landlord. The landlord does not have that ability neither. But the second and more significant reason I want to explain as to why this would be a mistake is because it is a potential red flag. As I've discussed in my previous videos, feel free to check those out, that when a tenant offers to do cash only exclusive payments, whether it be the whole year up front or first and last or just monthly amount cash, it's typically a red flag. Not all the time. It does not necessarily mean this is a bad tenant or this tenant will be a bad tenant. It does not necessitate such. However, it can be a red flag. And in my experience and the experience of many of my colleagues, when an all cash offer comes, it's typically some sort of hidden Airbnb arrangement wherein the person is renting it out so he can Airbnb the property and not tell the landlord. Or in some rare occasions, you are harboring a tenant with illicit means for income. And moving on to number 4, and number 4 is actually a related matter. And number 4 is when you as a landlord have a lot of correspondences with your tenant that's either in person and on the phone, and you don't have a lot of written correspondences, whether it's via email or written letters in old-fashioned way. Now, why is this a mistake? Well, once again, and this actually comes up way more often than you would think, when a potential dispute arises, and irregardless and irrespective of who's in the right and who's in the wrong, we can have situations where a dispute, a misunderstanding, it's just both parties think they're right and they're acting in good faith, but there has been a miscommunication. Or you have rare instances where one party is out and route trying to intentionally deceive the other party, whether that's the landlord or the tenant. For any of these circumstances, whatever dynamic is at play, it's always good to have written correspondences, even if you've confirmed something 100 times, confirm it 101st time, so you have proof or some sort of record to reference back to. Because if a potential dispute does arise and this dispute is not mollified in any circumstance, you will go to the landlord-tenant board, and the landlord-tenant board will try to look at documents. So even for small stuff, if you think you have a clear understanding and you and your tenant are on the same page, Even then, be annoying, verify, confirm, because it can only help you in the long run. Sure, sometimes it'll be indifferent. It will never do anything. You'll never need to resort back to the written correspondences because there will be no dispute, hopefully. But as a security measure for both parties, actually, the tenant side as well, it's always good to have some sort of written record or written correspondence to refer back to in the case of potential dispute or misunderstandings. Number 3, landlords, in my experience, and beginner landlords really try to cut corners by hiring cheap labor. Now, this is a case actually that I can refer to working with a very experienced landlord. I mean, this landlord brought me a lot of business. And what this individual did was this person would hire cheap labor so this person could save costs when the tenants had potential issues. For instance, one of the properties that we worked with, and I worked with this person, the tenants, I brought in the tenants. I was also representing the landlord, like many other cases with this client of mine. And as I said, this is a big client. What happened was the tenant saw that there were certain plumbing issues. And I put in the agreement that the landlord is responsible to fix and remedy such issues. And the landlord did as such. However, this individual hired cheap labor because this individual wanted to save costs. The contractor did not do a good job whatsoever, and this issue became a reoccurring issue. It got to a point where not only with this property, but 3 other properties that I worked with her, this also was a problem where the cheap labor was not doing a good job. It got to a point where I had to sit down and have a talk with this individual, somewhat of an intervention, and say, look, I know you're trying to minimize costs so you can maximize profits, but when there's an issue, it's better to forego some potential profit and increase some costs there so in the long run, the property functions correctly. Number 2, when the landlord is overly concerned, preoccupied, and keen on the price, meaning when the landlord prioritizes the most amount of money they can get from a potential tenant over most and every other factor. And once again, this applies to both beginner landlords, in my opinion, and very experienced landlords. Now, as a real estate agent who represents landlords and tenants in some situations, both sides in the same transaction, my job is to bring, in the case of tenancy, the best tenant for the best price. Meaning, in some circumstances, I will bring very good tenants, good people that will pay rent, keep the property clean, abide by the rules, fix the property sometimes at their own expense, really care for the property, and really won't cause any headache whatsoever. Perfect 10 out of 10 tenants. But these individuals, for whatever reasons, may not offer the highest price. On the flip side of that, you have individuals who will offer any price in order to get their foot in the door. And once they're in the door, because of the laws that make it very difficult to evict potential bad tenants, they will just stay there and not pay rent and live somewhat freely for a long period of time. So when I work with landlords, the first thing I say is, look, with tenancy and leasing, price is important. So if you have a property and the market value is anywhere between $3,000 a month to $3,200 a month, and someone comes with an offer of $3,200 or $3,100 and they have good tenants, then yeah, let's go forward with that. Let's investigate, confirm, verify, go forward. But with tenancy and leasing, the price is not so important for you to forego potentially good tenants for a higher unreasonable price. So if we receive an offer for your property that we established the market value is $3,100 to $3,200, but this person's offering $3,500. But by all measures, looking at their job letter, references, investigating some a little bit further, they're not good tenants. Maybe they're subpar or even poor potential tenants. There's a lot of red flags. This does not mean we go with the $3,500 offer over the $3,200 offer. This is not purchase and sale, it's tenancy. You are in a roundabout way entering into a relationship with someone for a year or 2 years. It's almost actually close to marriage in a sense, because you're entering into a relationship under contract. purchase and sale price is one of the most important things. You know, the quality of the buyer is not really a key concern for the seller. And lastly, number one, and I think this applies mostly to beginner landlords, is when the landlord is not familiar with residential tenancy laws in their jurisdiction. So why is this important? Well, as an example, I was working with a first-time home investor who was obviously renting out their property in order to bring in some rental income to cover costs. Watch my passive income videos where I address that arrangement. But this individual was not aware that in a situation where the tenant cannot pay rent and defaults on rent multiple times, that as a recourse, they cannot change the locks where I work. Maybe where you are watching this or other realtors work, maybe that's a legal recourse. In residential tenancy here, you cannot change the locks because the tenant is not paying rent. That is an illegal action. Unfortunately, this individual, despite my admonishment that they cannot do this, did as such anyways. Luckily for him, the tenant was very easygoing. Although this tenant was not paying rent, ethically they were a good person. They forgave the landlord and did not pursue it legally. However, this landlord, once this whole debacle regarding the lock was solved, made another mistake. They posted a eviction letter on the door of the property. Now, once again, this might be common sense to you that yes, why can't you do that? That you see that in movies, it's been happening since medieval times. You post things on the front entrance of properties and edifices. But in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, as of 2020, and as of the last decade, that is illegal. You cannot post any kind of notice of termination, eviction, a thank you letter. You cannot physically post it on the front door. And this individual did. And this time they did not even ask me whether this was legal or a good idea. Anyways, that's the video for today. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, comment, rate, and review. And yeah, many more videos coming up. Stay in touch. Thank you.